How do everybody? Just before I get into the main part of my video, I'm just going to share a quick clip from something that's happened during the week, and it's basically that video of the picture of Lord Balfour getting slashed up. I'm just going to share it for the benefit of people who may not have seen it. The video's only about 10 seconds, so it ain't going to take long, and then I'll get into my main point of what this video is actually about. Right, so now that video's done, I will come back to that shortly, and it was more just to get it into people's mind's eyes for later on, as I'm going to be discussing through the topic of this video. And I think we're starting to see a lot of pieces fall into place now, or at least I think a lot of evidence is being shown about some of the things I've spoken about in other videos. Part of it to do with like normalisation, part of it to do with the government in panic mode, all these different things. And I'll start off with the Islamic World War II, World War One memorial that's being built, that Jeremy Hunt's earmarked £1 million for. Now, I personally don't have a problem with that on the face of it, simply because the Gurkhas have got one, and so do Hindus and Sikhs, they have one. Now, there is obviously deeper arguments to be made that the National Cenotaph is obviously supposed to cover all veterans, so why these particular groups need their own individual memorials, I don't want to get into that, but that is an argument or a debate that can be had around that. But those two other groups do have memorials, so in fairness, why shouldn't Muslims have one as well? It is strange, though. The point that I think is that it's been made so public, and especially in the budget, it's the very first thing they spoke about. And I think what this leans into, and I spoke about this with to do with the conscription, I do think that we are going to end up going to war with Russia. Simply because the amount of ramping up that we're seeing, military industries being ramped up. We're constantly being told about Russia. Blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. To me, I'm personally, and I'm not an expert in this, but I'm personally seeing all the red flags for it. The fact that they're talking about conscription is normalisation, in my opinion. They keep talking about there being shortages of troops and the attrition of manpower. That the British Army's massively underpowered, etc., etc. So I think that this war, the publication, the open publication of this war memorial is more to do with trying to bring Muslims into the mythos of what it is to be British, so to speak. And I do feel, and this is something that the Soviets understood, by the way, that mass immigration was a massive, massive thing in the Soviet Union, and it's part of the reason why now we're seeing the Russian invasion of Ukraine and why there's so many ethnic Russians in Ukraine, because the Soviets moved people around the Soviet Union in huge, huge numbers. And that was to do with ruling people, because they understood, and we even know this now, that when people have no historical connection to an area, there is no loyalty, so to speak, there. Only a passive loyalty, and you can also bring in draconian laws, which if it was a incredibly homogenous society, you wouldn't be able to pass, because again, having large migrant populations, the people have no emotional connection to laws being changed. Now our government, I'm not saying are doing that, but they could be, either or. But I think what it is about bringing in this war memorial, because there is such a large number of Muslims in the country, they feel that they are going to really, really struggle with conscription and also with stability. I think they see that there is a future national security problem. So I think the Islamic War Memorial for the World Wars is about trying to normalise in the minds of people from that particular community that they're just as British as fish and chips, so to speak, and they have an emotional trying to create that emotional connection to the history of this land, and not just being a migrant population, so to speak. I don't think it's going to work. I really don't. I think they've fostered multiculturalism for so long, and to such a great extent now, that I think it's too. I think that horse has bolted long ago, and that isn't to disparage anybody who is from that community, who does actually feel a loyalty to Britain and does feel British as me. And to be fair, and I have no problem with migrants, by the way. I've said before, I'm ex-military and I am a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan. I've served alongside plenty of people from the Commonwealth. And I've got nothing but good words to say about them. Love those people. Absolute amazing memories with all of them. And they all love Britain, very, very loyal people, all from a total varied background. So I'm not per se against migration, so to speak. I just think the level of migration that we've had is absolutely disgusting, and I think it's a national security threat. But also, I want to speak about what's happened just with Tommy Robinson, just very quickly, that he's been arrested again. I have spoken about some of my other videos about how the government do see the awakening of a white identity in the country as being a threat to what they would deem national security. And I do think that the public arresting of Tommy Robinson is a further warning to the white population to shut up and stay in your lane and keep your head down. Along with Sam Millet being arrested, I think that was the exact same reason there. It's just about trying to demoralise the white population, in my opinion, to try and keep them just to shut up and accept your fate, basically, with that. Now I'm going to get onto that painting now as well. So we've obviously seen that painting being slashed up. And again, this highlights part of the problem that we are seeing in our society, which, and I think, again, that is not that, I think that event happened after the publication of the Islamic War Memorial, but things like that, like we've seen it all with the Gaza protests, and we've seen it with the Colston statue getting torn down, and the attempt to do it in Oxford University, I think it was, where the students tried to do a statue there. I think it was Cecil Rhodes. The government again are in full-on panic mode because they've essentially created an oikophobic class who absolutely hate Britain, and who are going to university and getting trained to hate Britain for historical grievances, like we're the only people in the world who've ever done anything questionable by today's standards, so to speak. So what we look at today and say, well, you shouldn't have done that, you can't really say that with history. I know a lot of people might not like that, but that is just the truth of it. The world was very different then, and people viewed the world very differently in history, all people. So that poster being, not poster, that portrait being slashed up is just highlights the absolute hatred that these people have, and they use it as an excuse of, well, universities and this have been bombed in Gaza, so if you're so upset about that portrait being slashed up, why are you so upset? Why aren't you upset about that in Gaza? Well, for a start, that portrait is not in Gaza. Secondly, slashing that portrait up is going to do absolutely nothing to help the people of Gaza. And thirdly, I genuinely don't believe that those people do actually care about Gaza, and I think it's more about acting in a rebellious manner because the institutions and the so-called ruling elite of this country have been so weak in keeping control. And I think the only way we're going to get control of those sorts of things back is to go quite draconian in that regard. And I think I genuinely believe people like that should be flogged. And I'm not saying that for effect. I genuinely mean that. I think that young lady should be tied to a post and she should be lashed with a cat o' nine tails at least 10 times. It's absolutely disgusting. Who the hell does she think she is to desecrate our culture, values and traditions like that? And that bag on her back is worth apparently over £1,000. So she's not what you would call your average student either. Like your average poor student living on super noodles. She's clearly, if I'm correct in my observation, that bag, she's clearly a wealthy person. But this is also the other part that the government is panicking about. And again, I come back to the conscription again. We have approximately, we can thank Tony Blair for this, approximately 50% of the population go to university now. Now, I'm not saying the entire 50% of those people hate Britain, but we have a large, effective, educated class who are well organised, as we see with these Gaza protests, and well motivated to act as, I suppose, a fifth column if we do end up in a war with say, Russia. These people could cause insane problems in the country. So again, the government, I've just had to do a quick edit there. I had a call happen, halfway through recording. So so I'm trying to get my train of thought back. So the government could see huge problems being caused by educated agitators, but brought on by, and it doesn't take a lot of people. So when I say like, by Muslim extremists, there could be very well people now who are Muslims watching this and saying, but I wouldn't do that, so I'm not saying that about you. But as we saw with things like the Bolshevik Revolution, the actual revolution itself, when it happened, it was only 1,000 people. You don't need a large number of people. It's just a very, very small number of highly motivated individuals who are willing to do extreme things. And there are people in the Islamic community who are willing to do extreme things. Suicide bombing is a very, very extreme thing. Cutting off a man's head in the street is a very, very extreme thing. So we can't kid ourselves that these highly educated, highly motivated people teaming up with incredibly extreme individuals could lead to serious problems in this country. And we have recent history examples of that. That's exactly what happened in the Iranian Revolution, where socialists, communists, students, and extreme Muslims teamed up to overthrow the royal family and the monarchists, and they succeeded. And then the Muslims consolidated because they were the ones who understood elite theory and understood the game that needs place. They were the ones who then went on the offensive after they took over and then destroyed the allies of convenience. And the same happened in Afghanistan as well, but with the opposite result, where you had the Communist Party coalition with Orthodox Muslims overthrew the ruling elite in a general election. But then the communists, as they were the more organised and more powerful faction, and again the more educated and the more politically aware, they then went on to invite the Soviet Union into the country to consolidate their power and to try and crush their allies of convenience, being the Orthodox Muslims. So this isn't anything that, with any basic understanding of the 20th century and history of it, these things aren't surprising of what we're seeing, and our ruling elites will be well aware of these, especially the security services advising them. They will be fully aware of what's happening. And again, this is why they're coming down so hard on the white population of the country, because again they know what happens with things like that, because you just need to look at the Weimar Republic and what happened then. Again, there are so many parallels with what happened in the Weimar Republic, and same in Italy as well. When Mussolini took over, we are seeing so many parallels with Weimar, with Italy, with Iran, with Afghanistan, with all these places where there's been these massive revolutions in the 20th century, and the government are in full panic mode, which is why we are seeing these attempts at normalisation of things like the Islamic memorial, things like generals now speaking about conscription, things now like the media constantly talking about there being a managed shortage in things like the police and in the military. This is all about the government trying to normalise and trying to motivate the public so they can keep control in future. Anyway, I've prattled on for quite a while now. I'm gonna leave it at that. If you found that insightful or informative, or it's giving you so much to think about, please do like, subscribe, and definitely do give me a comment below whether you agree with me or not. I do love reading your comments, and I do love having a bit of an exchange with people. And it's wonderful to have that with people and get new ideas, because I'm not a closed mind, and I am open to new ideas. And I don't claim to be right. I'm happy to say I'm wrong if I'm wrong. I'm not, like I say, I'm not a closed book in that regard. So anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that. Thanks very much. Take care. Goodbye.